Hi, I'm Mal from the Money Study, bringing you another episode of the Ultimate PSS Education Series. This one is number 4. It's all about this thing called the 10-year rule. Before we kick it off, there's the usual disclaimer giving facts and figures. This is information only, not to be construed as advice. Now, the 10-year rule was it's rather a bizarre thing, really, to be quite frank. But what it basically came down to was that with the matching arrangements we've spoken about already, there was a 10-year period for when your contributions were only matched up to a 5% maximum. So you might have put in 8%, but instead of getting an 8% matching for a period of 10 years, you only got a matching of 5%, so maximum of 5%. Now, of course, people have been saying, well, gee, why on earth would I make contributions if I was inside that 10-year rule? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, really, when should you have started your 10%? Day one. Day one. Even though there is this thing called a 10-year rule, the 10-year rule, quite frankly, is not the first 10 years anyway. But basically what it boils down to is, obviously, if you are contributing more, even though you're not getting the matching on it, your multiple is bigger. If your multiple is bigger, your PSS is going to be bigger. You should have all, quite frankly, if you could afford it. Now, I say life is a bit back to front, unfortunately. When we're younger, we've got kids and mortgages, it's a bit hard to find 10% of our salary. But in theory, yep, 10% day one is what should have happened. Now, this 10-year rule, as I said, it's not the first 10 years. Everyone thinks it's the first 10 years of your career. No, it's not. The 10-year rule is not even any 10 consecutive years. It's 10 individual years. They actually go looking for these 10 years at the end when you finally come to take your benefit. What it comes down to is that they are basically saying that for a period of 10 years, they will only match your contributions up to 10%. So let's say in the first 10 years, now of course, generally speaking, the first 10 years, up until the first 10 years, then they will become the 10 years that they look at because they just don't know how long you're going to be working for. But once you've done 30 years or so, then they go looking for the best 10 years to do the calculations. Now what it boils down to is this. If you contributed more than 5% in the first 10 years. So let's say you did 8% in years 1, 2, 3. Initially, yes, you would have only got matched at 5% because they assumed, or they didn't assume, but they didn't know how long you're going to work for. So that was that you were inside a 10-year period. Therefore, you're only getting matched at 5%. If, however, later on, let's say in year 23, you're on a big salary and you're getting close to leaving or maximising your benefit, or you need some extra money in a year, and for whatever reason, in year 23 or so, you only contribute 2%. They will then, when they come to give you your benefit, go back in time, look at all the years of contributing. They'll see there that you've done 8% in year 1, and they only gave you 5% matching. But in year 23, you only did a 2% matching, when of course they only matched it at 2. They will change those years around and effectively, just give you the 2% matching on the 2%, but they'll classify those as one of the 10 years. And your year 1 will therefore then get an increase from a 5% up to the 8%. You'll get an extra 3%. So they basically find the 10 worst years. So any year that you were doing less than 5%, if there's any of those years that you've got, they will become the 10 years. Now, if you've always done 5% or more, then this 10-year rule, quite frankly, there's going to be absolutely no impact for you. No impact at all. But if you have indeed done more than 5% in the first 10 years, and less than your 5% in subsequent years, there will be an adjustment, and the adjustment can only be in your favour. It'll make your PSS marginally bigger, because of these extra contribution matching arrangements because of the 10-year rule. You don't see this on your statement, doesn't occur anywhere. It's literally an adjustment, a calculation done at the time of retirement. But for the bulk of you, this 10-year rule is quite irrelevant. Now, of course, there are going to be some people who are still within this 10-year rule. So just imagine someone who started work many years ago. They started in 1995 or so. They did 2 or 3 years with the government. They were in the PSS. They were contributing, and they were getting only up to that 5% matching. But they did 3 years. They went away for a number of years. They've returned, and now they've done another 3 years. They've only done 6 years total. So they are still within the 10-year rule, meaning that even if they did 10% all these years later, they're still only going to get matched at 5% because they are inside a 10-year period. Now, once they get to the 10 years total, cumulative across all of the years in the public service, and they're doing 10%, yep, they get that 10% matching immediately. It doesn't mean you have to be doing 10% for 10 years to get that 10% matching. Literally just means you've got to be working for the government in the scheme, in the PSS for 10 years. And then any time you are doing your 10% after that 10-year period, you'll automatically get that 10% matching. Bit confusing, but for many of you, really, it's pretty irrelevant unless say you did do smaller contributions earlier on. Hope to see you on another session.